Riverstone, Texas, a peaceful town nestled in the heart of the Lone Star State, had hosted many celebrations, but none as memorable as the wedding of Sheriff Cole Braxton and Lila Prescott. Held at a vast ranch under a sky filled with stars, the event was an idyllic scene of love and hope. At 38, Cole was the admired sheriff and local hero, having devoted his life to the service of the community. Lila, 30, was a creative newcomer who had captivated him with her charm and artistic spirit. Together, they appeared to personify happiness, and their union was embraced by everyone, from law enforcement officers to local educators. Guests watched, tears in their eyes, as the couple exchanged vows beneath a canopy of wildflowers. Lila, glowing in a modest yet sophisticated lace dress, clung to Cole's hands as they promised to be together forever. As they shared their first dance beneath twinkling lights, the applause was deafening, as though the entire town had gathered to celebrate the sheriff and his bride. It was the kind of wedding that stirred feelings of hope, joy, and perhaps a touch of envy. But less than 24 hours later, that perfect love story would shatter in an unimaginable way. The morning after their wedding, the couple had planned to depart for a remote honeymoon cabin deep in the Texas Hill Country. Instead, police officers responding to a 911 call discovered Sheriff Cole Braxton dead in the honeymoon suite at the Riverstone Inn, a gunshot wound to his chest. Lila Prescott was sitting nearby, holding the gun that had taken his life. Her wedding dress was crumpled in a corner, replaced by a simple white bathrobe stained with tears. When officers arrived, Lila made no attempt to resist. Her voice was calm, though hollow, as she handed them the weapon and uttered 5 words that would send shockwaves through the town. "He lied to me. Everything." The image of the radiant bride was now replaced by that of a grief-stricken woman, as she was handcuffed and escorted away from the scene. Riverstone's residents were left grappling with the unthinkable. Sheriff Braxton, the man they trusted to uphold the law, was dead, and his wife, the woman who had stood by him only hours before, was now his confessed killer. Riverstone, a town familiar with gossip, had never encountered a crime like this. The very people who had celebrated the couple at the wedding now found themselves divided. Whispers of disbelief spread in coffee shops and diners. "How could she do this? He was the kindest man I've ever known." "Something doesn't make sense. Lila must have had a reason." Some portrayed Lila as a heartless woman who had betrayed the town's hero, while others questioned if there was more to the story. A hidden truth behind Cole's badge and his charismatic smile. For every accusation aimed at Lila, there was an unanswered question about Cole. The town quickly became a battleground of rumors and speculation. Lila Prescott had moved to Riverstone just over a year before her wedding to Cole, seeking a fresh start after leaving behind a turbulent life in Houston. An art teacher with a passion for watercolor landscapes, she was known for her easygoing nature and warm smile. When she first met Cole at a charity event for local schools, it seemed like fate. He was the charming sheriff with a protective streak, and she was the artistic soul who added color to his structured life. Their whirlwind romance enchanted the town. Cole, who had been divorced for 2 years, was known for his strong sense of duty and unwavering commitment to the community. He had earned a reputation as a man of integrity, someone who could always be relied upon to do the right thing. To many, Cole represented the heart and soul of Riverstone. Lila's friends described her as someone deeply in love with the idea of starting over. She saw Cole as her safe haven, someone steady and dependable who could protect her from her past, according to Marcy Jensen, Lila's closest friend in town. From the outside, their relationship seemed like a fairy tale come true. 6 months after meeting, Cole proposed during the annual 4th of July parade, dropping to one knee in front of the entire town and presenting Lila with a sparkling diamond ring. As the crowd erupted in cheers, she tearfully said yes. Marcy recalled, "She looked so happy. We all thought she'd found her fairy tale." But as news of Cole's death spread, questions began to arise about what could have driven Lila to kill the man she had promised to love forever. Theories ranged from a heated argument to a premeditated act of jealousy, but the truth remained elusive. The only person who could explain what happened in the honeymoon suite was Lila, and she wasn't talking. Instead, she sat in a jail cell, refusing to speak to anyone but her lawyer. Meanwhile, the Riverstone Police Department, many of whom had worked under Cole, faced the difficult task of investigating their former boss. For Detective Owen Travis, who had been Cole's deputy for years, the case was personal. "I didn't just lose my sheriff," Travis later said. "I lost a friend. But I'm also here to find the truth, no matter where it leads." What that truth was, no one could guess. The wedding had been perfect, the couple's love seemingly real. But as the investigation progressed, it became clear that the events of the previous night were much more complicated than anyone had imagined. Just hours into the investigation, detectives discovered a key piece of evidence that would change everything. A locked briefcase found in the honeymoon suite. Inside were documents that hinted at a secret Cole had been keeping. A secret so dark it could have destroyed his reputation and his marriage in an instant. As investigators pieced together the contents, a new narrative began to emerge. One suggesting that Cole was not the man Riverstone had thought him to be. And for Lila Prescott, the discovery of this secret turned her wedding night into a battle for survival. The beloved sheriff, once seen as the town's protector and hero, was now at the center of a tangled web of betrayal, deception, and violence. The bride, once seen as the embodiment of innocence, was now a woman fighting to explain the unthinkable. The question on everyone's mind was no longer why she did it, but rather what was Cole hiding, and how far had he gone to keep it secret. Riverstone, Texas, was a place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. With a population just under 10,000, it was a town where secrets were difficult to keep. That's why the relationship between Sheriff Cole Braxton and Lila Prescott became the talk of the town almost from the start. Lila had moved to Riverstone a little over a year before her wedding to Cole. At 30, she was an art teacher with a soft voice and a quiet grace, seeming somewhat out of place in the rugged, no-nonsense community. Her decision to leave the busy city of Houston for the sleepy small town raised a few eyebrows, especially since she offered little explanation for her departure. What she did share about her past painted the picture of a woman seeking a fresh start. She confided in her friend Marcy Jensen, saying that she had left behind a failed engagement and an unsatisfying career. "I needed space to breathe," she once said. Riverstone, with its wide-open skies and relaxed pace, seemed like the perfect place to start anew. Lila took a job teaching art at the local high school, quickly becoming a favorite among students and staff alike. Her creativity and gentle demeanor won her many admirers. But she remained somewhat aloof, not fully letting anyone into her personal life until she met Cole. At 38, Cole Braxton was more than just a sheriff. He was a symbol of stability in Riverstone. Born and raised in the town, Cole had joined the police force straight out of college and climbed the ranks through hard work and determination. After a stint in Austin working narcotics, he returned to Riverstone as sheriff, earning the community's respect and admiration. "He cared about people, and he believed in justice," said Detective Owen Travis, Cole's longtime deputy and close friend. "When Cole said he'd get the job done, you could trust him." Divorced for 2 years, Cole threw himself into his work, becoming a regular at local events and charity fundraisers. His reputation as a dedicated public servant, along with his rugged good looks, made him the town's most eligible bachelor. But Cole never seemed in a rush to settle down again, until Lila came into his life. The two met at a charity art auction at the Riverstone Community Center. Lila had volunteered to curate the event, donating some of her own paintings to raise money for the town's underfunded schools. Cole, ever the public figure, attended to show his support, though he later admitted he knew little about art. Witnesses recalled that the connection between them was instant. Cole spent much of the evening by Lila's side, asking questions about her work and sharing stories from his time on the force. By the end of the night, he had not only bought one of her paintings, a serene depiction of the Texas hill country, but had also asked her out to dinner. Lila was smitten. "She told me that night she hadn't felt that spark in years," recalled Marcy Jensen. "I think she saw Cole as the strong, dependable man who could give her the stability she'd been looking for." As they began dating, Cole and Lila quickly became inseparable, appearing to be the perfect couple. Cole, the stoic protector, and Lila, the artistic dreamer, shared date nights at the town's lone steakhouse and romantic weekends in Austin. Their relationship seemed like something out of a fairy tale. 6 months later, Cole proposed during the annual 4th of July parade, standing atop a float decorated with red, white, and blue streamers. He dropped to one knee in front of the entire town, presenting Lila with a diamond ring. The crowd erupted in cheers as Lila tearfully said yes, sealing their status as Riverstone's golden couple. However, not everyone was convinced that their love story was as perfect as it seemed. While Cole's friends congratulated him for finding happiness again, Some of Lila's closest confidants worried that the relationship was moving too quickly. Lila was happy, sure, Marcy admitted. But there was always this undercurrent of doubt. I could tell she was holding something back, like she wasn't completely sure about Cole. Lila wasn't the only one with reservations. As news of their engagement spread, rumors began circulating about Cole's past. Whispers suggesting a darker side to the sheriff's otherwise spotless reputation. Most people dismissed the gossip as baseless small-town talk, but a few residents claimed to know more. "He was a good man, no doubt," said Tom Lugston, a retired deputy who had worked with Cole during his time in Austin. "But good men can make bad choices, especially under pressure. Cole had his secrets, like anyone else. One of those secrets appeared to be his connection to a high-profile drug bust from years earlier. A case that had made headlines in Austin, but had long since faded from public memory. As the wedding neared, a man named Dale Turner began asking questions around town, claiming ties to someone involved in the case. When Cole found out about Dale's presence, he dismissed it as a coincidence, but those closest to him noticed a subtle shift in his behavior. Despite the growing unease, Cole and Lila pressed ahead with their wedding plans. The ceremony, held at the Riverstone Ranch, was a community event with nearly everyone in town in attendance. Friends described the day as magical, filled with heartfelt vows, joyous laughter, and a sense of hope for the future. But for Lila, the perfection of the day was overshadowed by a gnawing sense of doubt. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Cole was hiding something from her. Something that could change everything if she ever discovered it. As the couple danced under the stars that evening, a shadow cast a pall over the celebration. Lila noticed a man standing at the edge of the crowd, watching them with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. When she asked Cole who he was, his response was short and dismissive. "No one you need to worry about." That man, she would later find out, was Dale Turner. And his presence at the wedding was no accident. For Lila, the events of that night marked the first signs of cracks in the fairy tale she had built. And within 24 hours, those cracks would deepen into an insurmountable divide, leading to a violent moment that would change her life, and the town of Riverstone, forever. On October 7th, Riverstone, Texas, woke to a crisp, golden morning, the perfect day for a wedding. The town had been abuzz for weeks in anticipation of Sheriff Cole Braxton and Lila Prescott's nuptials, set to take place at the expansive Riverstone Ranch. The ceremony was expected to be the event of the year, and it lived up to that expectation. Beneath a canopy of wildflowers and fairy lights, Cole and Lila exchanged vows surrounded by friends, family, and what seemed like the entire town. Lila, glowing in her lace gown, had her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she nervously smiled at Cole. In turn, he looked dashing in a well-fitted suit, his sheriff's badge absent for the first time in years. The air was filled with joy, laughter, and hope for a new beginning. But even in the perfection of the day, small moments of discomfort rippled just beneath the surface, unnoticed by most, but quietly lingering with those closest to the couple. For Lila, the wedding was more than a celebration. It was the beginning of something, though shadowed by questions she couldn't quite shake. The ceremony began with the grace and warmth that seemed to embody their love story. Cole's deep voice resonated through the gathered crowd as he recited his vows, promising to protect, honor, and love Lila for the rest of his life. His words moved many in the audience to tears, including Lila's best friend Marcy Jensen, who later recalled that she had never seen Lila so emotional. "I will never let you feel alone again," Cole concluded, slipping the ring onto Lila's finger. His gaze was steady, reassuring, and to anyone watching, it seemed like a love story destined to stand the test of time. However, Lila's vows, though equally heartfelt, carried a hint of uncertainty. Her voice wavered slightly as she promised to trust and stand by Cole, and for a brief moment, her eyes darted toward the horizon, as if searching for something, or someone. The moment passed quickly, smoothed over by the crowd's cheers and applause, but Marcy noticed the subtle hesitation. It was like she was trying to convince herself of something, Marcy would later recall, like she wasn't completely sure. The reception, held under a massive white tent near the ranch house, was a lively affair. Long tables adorned with sunflowers and mason jars filled with sweet tea stretched across the lawn, and a live band played country ballads as guests mingled and danced. Children ran barefoot through the grass while elderly neighbors clinked glasses and swapped stories about the happy couple. Cole and Lila's first dance was a highlight of the evening. as they swayed to a soft rendition of Unchained Melody. The crowd fell silent, captivated by the sight of the sheriff and his bride, lost in each other's arms. For a moment, it seemed as though all doubts and tensions had vanished. But even amid the festivities, subtle signs hinted at an undercurrent of unease. Lila, despite her outward smile, seemed distracted, her eyes often scanning the crowd. At one point, she noticed a man lingering near the edge of the reception tent, dressed in dark clothing and partially hidden by a row of trees. He appeared to be watching her, or perhaps Cole. Lila pointed him out to Cole, who immediately tensed. "Who is that?" she asked in a low, cautious voice. Cole glanced in the direction she indicated, his expression tightening for just a moment before he forced a smile. "Just an old acquaintance," he said, brushing it off. "Nothing to worry about." But the encounter left Lila uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man's presence was deliberate, that he wasn't just a passing guest or a curious stranger. When she tried to press Cole further, he deflected, pulling her into a conversation with one of his deputies. It was a subtle deflection, but it planted a seed of doubt in Lila's mind. Later, when she tried to point the man out to Marcy, he was gone. As the night wore on, Lila overheard a conversation that deepened her discomfort. While stepping away from the tent to get some fresh air, she passed by the barn and heard Cole speaking in hushed tones. The words were muffled, but the tone was unmistakably tense. She could hear him addressing someone, likely the same man she had seen earlier. "I told you this isn't the time," Cole said, his voice low but firm. "You need to leave. We'll talk later." The other man's reply was too quiet for Lila to hear, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. When she asked Cole about it later, he dismissed her concerns with practiced ease. "It's just work stuff," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want anything ruining today." Though his reassurance seemed genuine, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Why would a work issue arise on their wedding day, and why had the man looked so familiar? Even as the evening drew to a close, Lila's doubts lingered. Cole and Lila said their goodbyes and drove off to the Riverstone Inn, where they would spend the night before heading to their honeymoon cabin the next morning. Guests waved sparklers in the air as the couple's car disappeared into the night, their laughter and cheers echoing across the ranch. For most, the day had been a dream, a union of two souls who seemed destined to bring out the best in each other. But for Lila, the events of the day left her with more questions than answers. Who was the man at the edge of the tent? What had Cole been discussing in the barn? And why did she feel as though a shadow was hanging over what should have been the happiest day of her life? These doubts followed her into the honeymoon suite, where a locked briefcase sitting in the corner of the room would soon unravel everything she thought she knew about her husband. Less than 24 hours after saying "I do," Lila would discover a truth so shocking that it would lead her to do the unthinkable, forever changing the town of Riverstone. The honeymoon suite at the Riverstone Inn was as quaint and charming as the rest of the town. Nestled on the edge of a rolling pasture, the inn was known for its cozy rooms and romantic atmosphere. The room Cole had reserved was no exception. A four-poster bed draped in white linens, a roaring fireplace, and a bottle of champagne chilling on the nightstand. Everything seemed to promise a perfect start to their new life together. But for Lila Prescott, the unease that had settled over her during the wedding day lingered as she crossed the threshold of the room. She wanted to push aside her doubts and enjoy the first night of her marriage to Sheriff Cole Braxton. But a gnawing sense of dread kept creeping back in. "I'll grab us some glasses for the champagne," Cole said, his tone light as he disappeared into the bathroom. Lila nodded, her smile strained. She sat down her small overnight bag and glanced around the room, her eyes falling on a sleek black briefcase propped against the far corner. It was an ordinary enough object, but something about it struck her as odd. She had seen Cole carry it earlier in the day, but when she had asked him what it was, he had brushed her off, saying it contained work-related materials. The sheriff's badge on the corner of the case seemed to confirm that. Still, Lila couldn't shake her curiosity. What kind of work would a sheriff bring to his honeymoon? As Cole busied himself in the bathroom, Lila hesitated. She knew it wasn't her place to pry, but the events of the day, the mysterious man at the wedding, the whispered conversation by the barn, had left her uneasy. Before she could stop herself, she found herself kneeling by the briefcase. The case was locked, but the zipper around the edges wasn't fully closed. A small gap revealed the edge of a folder sticking out just enough to tempt her curiosity. She glanced toward the bathroom, hearing the faint sound of running water, before carefully tugging the folder free. What she saw stopped her cold. The folder contained a series of documents marked with the logo of the Texas Department of Public Safety. The first was a case file with the name Grace Turner printed in bold letters across the top. Lila's breath caught. She didn't recognize the name, but as she flipped through the pages, a story began to unfold. Grace Turner, it seemed, had been an informant for a major drug investigation that Cole had overseen during his time working narcotics in Austin. The investigation had led to several arrests and the dismantling of a powerful cartel operation. Cole had been praised for his role in the case, even making headlines in the local papers. But Grace Turner hadn't lived to see the end of it. According to the file, she had gone missing just days after providing crucial testimony. Her disappearance was ruled suspicious, but the case went cold when no evidence of foul play was found. The last person confirmed to have seen her alive? Sheriff Cole Braxton. Lila's hands trembled as she flipped through the rest of the folder. There were emails, printed exchanges between Cole and his colleagues discussing Grace's disappearance. One email in particular caught her attention. "If this gets out, it'll ruin everything," one message read. "Keep a lid on it. She knew the risks." The message had been sent by Cole himself. Another document in the file was even more damning. A receipt for a wire transfer made to Grace Turner's bank account just days before her disappearance. The amount was large, too large for a routine payment, and the note attached simply read, "Final arrangements." Lila felt her stomach turn. The implication was clear. Lila's heart pounded as she pieced together the horrifying truth. Cole had likely paid off Grace Turner to disappear, or worse, and he had been directly involved. The sound of the bathroom door opening pulled Lila back to reality. In a rush, she shoved the folder back into the briefcase and zipped it shut just as Cole walked into the room, holding 2 glasses of champagne. His smile faltered when he saw her sitting on the floor, pale and tense. "Everything okay?" he asked, setting the glasses down. Lila hesitated, her heart racing. She wanted to confront him immediately but knew she needed more answers first. "Yeah," she said finally, forcing a smile. "I was just getting my things organized." Cole studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "All right," he said after a pause, handing her a glass of champagne. "To us." Lila raised her glass but didn't drink. Her mind raced. What had she just uncovered, and how deep did Cole's secrets run? That night, while Cole peacefully drifted off beside her, Lila lay awake, staring at the ceiling and replaying the events of the day. The man at the wedding, the whispered conversation, the contents of the briefcase. It all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Cole was hiding something dark, and it had everything to do with Grace Turner. At one point, Lila slipped out of bed and retrieved her phone, searching for news articles about Cole's drug investigation in Austin. The more she read, the more unsettled she became. Grace Turner's disappearance had been quietly swept under the rug, her name barely mentioned in any follow-up reports about the case's success. But in one article, a quote from Grace's brother, Dale Turner, caught Lila's attention. "My sister didn't just vanish. Someone made her disappear, and I think I know who." Lila's heart raced as the pieces fell into place. The man at the wedding, the one Cole had dismissed as an old acquaintance, had to be Dale Turner. And if he was still trying to uncover the truth about his sister's disappearance, that meant the truth about Cole wasn't as well hidden as he thought. By dawn, Lila had made a decision she couldn't ignore. Whatever Cole had done, whatever secrets he was keeping, she couldn't be part of it. But confronting him wouldn't be easy. Cole wasn't just her husband. He was the sheriff, a man with power and connections. If he realized she knew the truth, who knew what he might do to protect himself? As the sunlight crept into the room, Cole stirred beside her, groggily reaching for her hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Braxton," he said, his voice warm and affectionate. Lila forced a smile, but inside, fear was growing. Cole might have been her husband, but after what she had discovered, he also felt like a stranger, and a dangerous one. The man she had married less than 24 hours ago was not the person she thought he was. And as she prepared to confront him, She knew one thing for certain. Their honeymoon was over. On the morning of October 8th, news of Sheriff Cole Braxton's death began to ripple through Riverstone. For a community that had just celebrated his wedding the day before, the revelation that Cole had been shot and that his new bride, Lila Prescott, had confessed to pulling the trigger was too much to comprehend. How could a love story that seemed so perfect unravel into tragedy in less than 24 hours? The honeymoon suite at the Riverstone Inn became a flurry of activity, as local law enforcement, led by Detective Owen Travis, arrived to secure the scene. Travis, a longtime deputy and Cole's closest confidant, struggled to keep his emotions in check as he stepped into the room. Cole's lifeless body lay sprawled near the bed, a gunshot wound to his chest, the blood staining the carpet in stark contrast to the otherwise pristine room. Nearby, Lila sat in a chair, pale, her hands trembling slightly. She was still in her bathrobe, her hair disheveled, but her demeanor was eerily calm. The gun, Cole's service weapon, lay neatly on the table beside her. "I shot him," Lila said quietly as officers approached. Her voice was steady but hollow, devoid of the panic or hysteria they might have expected. "He lied to me. I didn't have a choice." Those 5 words, repeated over and over, became the focal point of the investigation. He lied to me. But what had Cole lied about, and why had it led to his death? Lila was taken into custody without resistance and transported to the Riverstone Police Department, where she was placed in an interrogation room. As officers tried to piece together the events of the night, Lila refused to elaborate beyond her initial confession. "He lied to me," she repeated when questioned. "That's all you need to know." Detective Travis, still reeling from the loss of his friend and mentor, struggled to remain objective. "Lila, this doesn't make sense," he said, leaning across the table. "You just married the man. Why would you kill him? What happened in that room?" Lila's gaze remained fixed on the table. "Look in the briefcase," she said simply. "You'll find your answer there." Back at the crime scene, officers began combing through the room for evidence. The black briefcase, which Lila had pointed out during her arrest, quickly became the focus of their search. When they opened it, they found exactly what Lila had described: a folder containing documents related to the Grace Turner case, a cold case that had been all but forgotten outside law enforcement circles. The contents of the folder painted a damning picture. The emails, wire transfer receipt, and case notes suggested that Cole had been deeply involved in Grace's disappearance. The discovery raised immediate questions about Cole's integrity as a lawman and cast a shadow over his reputation. Was Riverstone's beloved sheriff not the hero they believed him to be? For Detective Travis, the revelation was devastating. "I trusted him," he later admitted. "We all did. He was the best of us, or so we thought." As investigators delved deeper into the briefcase's contents, additional pieces of evidence began to surface. One document, a handwritten note, appeared to be from Grace herself. In it, she expressed fear for her safety, writing, "If anything happens to me, Cole Braxton knows why." The note, dated just days before her disappearance, added weight to the theory that Cole had played a direct role in silencing Grace. Another troubling detail emerged when officers searched Cole's personal phone. Text messages exchanged between him and an unknown contact suggested he had been involved in a cover-up. "She's a liability," one message read. "Make sure she stays quiet," replied another. These messages, combined with the documents from the briefcase, painted a chilling picture of a man willing to go to great lengths to protect his career, even at the expense of someone's life. Another threat in the investigation emerged when officers identified the man Lila had seen at the wedding: Dale Turner, the brother of Grace Turner. Dale had been asking questions about Cole for years, convinced that the sheriff had been involved in his sister's disappearance. His presence at the wedding was far from coincidental. It suggested that he had come to confront Cole, and possibly to warn Lila. Detective Travis brought Dale in for questioning, hoping to piece together more of the story. Dale didn't mince words. "I know what he did to my sister," he said. "I've been trying to prove it for years, but no one would listen. Everyone thought Cole was this perfect guy, but he wasn't. He was a coward who got in over his head." Dale went on to explain that Grace had been working as an informant for Cole during a major drug investigation in Austin. When the operation concluded, Grace had planned to walk away from the arrangement. She had confided in Dale that she feared Cole wouldn't let her go. "She told me she had something on him," Dale said. "Something that could ruin him. That's why she disappeared. And now it looks like your sheriff did everything he could to make sure no one found out." Meanwhile, Lila remained tight-lipped during her interrogation, refusing to say more than what she had already told police. Her attorney, Carla Deo, issued a statement emphasizing Lila's claim of self-defense. "Ms. Prescott acted out of fear for her life," Deo said. "The evidence will show that Sheriff Braxton's actions on the night of his death and the secrets he was hiding left Lila with no choice but to protect herself." To the public, the statement raised more questions than answers. What exactly had happened in that honeymoon suite? Had Lila truly acted in self-defense, or was there more to the story? As the investigation continued, the town of Riverstone was plunged into turmoil. Cole Braxton had been a pillar of the community, a man who had earned the respect and admiration of nearly everyone who knew him. The revelations about his potential involvement in Grace Turner's disappearance and the subsequent cover-up shattered that image, leaving residents struggling to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the man the evidence was now revealing. Some refused to believe the allegations. "Cole was a good man," said Helen Mitchell, a local shop owner. "He wouldn't hurt anyone. This is just people trying to tear him down now that he's not here to defend himself." Others, however, began to question everything. "If he could keep something like this hidden," said Jason Morales, a retired firefighter, "what else was he capable of?" With the evidence mounting against Cole and the town divided over Lila's actions, Detective Travis faced the daunting task of piecing together a story that made sense. What had started as a clear-cut case of murder had spiraled into something far more complex, a web of lies, betrayal, and hidden truths that stretched back years before the wedding. And at the center of it all was Lila, a woman who had entered into a marriage believing she had found safety and stability, only to discover she had been drawn into a nightmare. The question now was whether her story would hold up under scrutiny, and whether the secret she had uncovered would finally bring justice for Grace Turner. As the investigation pressed forward, one thing became clear. The truth about Cole Braxton's life and death would change Riverstone forever. The name Grace Turner had been buried for years, lost in the shadows of old case files and forgotten headlines. But in the aftermath of Sheriff Cole Braxton's death, Grace's story came roaring back to life. Investigators began piecing together her tragic history, uncovering a web of lies, manipulation, and fear that would shed light on the shocking truth behind Cole's seemingly perfect image. Grace Turner had grown up in Austin, Texas, a single mother struggling to make ends meet while raising her son Evan, who was only 6 years old when she disappeared. At 24, Grace was resourceful and determined, juggling 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Despite the challenges, she was known for her warm smile and fierce love for her son. But beneath her hard-working exterior, Grace carried the weight of a dangerous secret. Grace had become an informant for the Austin Police Department after being caught with a small amount of drugs. To avoid jail time and keep her son, she agreed to provide information about a local drug ring she had connections to. That decision brought her into the orbit of Detective Cole Braxton, who was rising through the ranks of Austin's narcotics division. Grace and Cole's relationship began strictly professional, with Cole assigned to handle her as an informant, meeting her regularly to gather information about the drug ring's activities. But as the investigation progressed, their interactions grew more personal. Witnesses later claimed that Cole had developed a soft spot for Grace, often going out of his way to protect her from the dangers of being an informant. "They were close," said Eleanor Briggs, a bartender who had seen them together at a local diner where they often met. "Too close for a cop and an informant, if you ask me. There was something there, something more than just business." Lila's suspicions about Cole intensified as she uncovered more unsettling details. She realized that Grace Turner, once an informant for Cole's drug investigation, had feared for her life. Grace had confided in her brother Dale Turner that she felt like she was being watched. She said Cole kept reassuring her that she'd be safe, but she didn't believe him, Dale later told investigators. Grace had felt used, thinking that once she no longer served his purpose, she would be discarded. The operation that Cole had overseen culminated in a massive drug bust, and the headlines hailed the success, with Cole receiving praise for dismantling the cartel. But just days after the bust, Grace vanished without a trace. According to Dale, Grace had been planning to leave town with her son, fearing that the cartel would retaliate when they discovered she had been an informant. She had told him she was meeting with Cole one last time to finalize her relocation, but after that meeting, she was never seen again. Grace's family reported her missing when she didn't show up for a planned trip. Initially, authorities treated the disappearance as voluntary, speculating that Grace had gone into hiding. But her family didn't buy that explanation. Grace wouldn't just leave Evan behind, Dale insisted. She loved him more than anything. Despite their pleas, the investigation stalled, and no evidence suggested foul play. Cole, now advancing in his career, claimed to have no idea what happened to Grace, suggesting that she had simply chosen to start a new life elsewhere. The case went cold, and Grace's family was left with unanswered questions and growing doubts about Cole's involvement. Dale refused to let the matter rest, spending years investigating Cole's life, convinced that the sheriff knew more than he was letting on. "I knew he had something to do with it," Dale said. "But no one wanted to believe me. He was their hero, and I was just the guy making noise." When the contents of Cole's briefcase were discovered, the investigation into Grace's disappearance was revived. The documents contained crucial evidence, including a wire transfer labeled "Final Arrangements" and emails discussing Grace as a liability, suggesting that Cole had played a significant role in silencing her. Detectives dug deeper, interviewing Cole's former colleagues from his time in Austin. They uncovered troubling patterns of behavior, including reports of Cole pressuring witnesses to change their testimony. "He was charming, no doubt about it," one officer said. "But he was also ruthless when it came to getting what he wanted. If he thought Grace was a threat to his career, I wouldn't put anything past him." A forensic analysis of Cole's financial records revealed a series of payments to a private security contractor around the time of Grace's disappearance. The contractor admitted to tailing Grace on Cole's orders, but claimed to have no knowledge of what happened to her afterward. This suggested that Cole had been tracking Grace, though the reasons for doing so, whether to protect her or to silence a potential threat, remained unclear. For Dale, the reopening of the case was bittersweet. On one hand, it vindicated his years of suspicion about Cole. On the other, it forced him to relive the pain of losing his sister. "I just want to know what happened to her," Dale said. "And I want the world to know what kind of man Cole Braxton really was. He wasn't a hero. He was a liar." Meanwhile, Lila Prescott remained at the center of the investigation. Her actions on the night of Cole's death were still under scrutiny. The revelations about Grace Turner only strengthened her resolve to tell the truth about what had happened in the honeymoon suite. But as the full scope of Cole's secrets began to emerge, Lila couldn't help but wonder. Had she been just another pawn in his dangerous game? As detectives pieced together the events leading to Grace's disappearance and Cole's murder, one thing became increasingly clear. The story of Sheriff Cole Braxton was far darker and more complicated than anyone in Riverstone had imagined. For Lila, the truth was both a source of salvation and her greatest fear. Cole's death had opened the door to a decades-old mystery that now demanded resolution. Investigators continued to unearth evidence linking Cole to Grace's disappearance. The documents from the briefcase revealed far more than just the incriminating wire transfer and emails. Additional files showed the extent of Cole's manipulation, including surveillance logs detailing Grace's movements before her disappearance and non-disclosure agreements that appeared to have been prepared for Grace to sign in an attempt to silence her. Among the most chilling pieces of evidence was a letter from Grace to Cole, dated 3 days before her disappearance. In it, Grace begged for Cole's protection, fearing for both her and her son's safety. The final line of the letter stood out: "If anything happens to me, I'll make sure the truth comes out." This, along with the other documents, painted a picture of a man desperate to silence Grace, either out of fear of exposure or to avoid the consequences of his actions. As the investigation continued, it became clear that Cole had been manipulating everyone around him, from his colleagues to his community. One former deputy admitted that the Grace Turner investigation had always felt suspicious, but no one dared question Cole. Another former officer, Rachel Decker, revealed that Cole had pressured her to falsify reports related to Grace's disappearance. "I thought he was just trying to protect an informant," Rachel said. "Now I think he was protecting himself." Despite the mounting evidence against Cole, investigators still lacked one critical piece of evidence: definitive proof of what had happened to Grace Turner. Without a body or eyewitness testimony, the case remained frustratingly incomplete. Dale Turner, Grace's brother, became a key ally in the search for answers. He provided detectives with details about Grace's final days, including a conversation in which she confided that she had hidden something important in case anything happened to her. With Dale's help, detectives searched Grace's former home and found a USB drive taped under a dresser drawer. The drive contained recordings of conversations between Grace and Cole, one of which caught Cole telling Grace, "If you don't drop this, you'll regret it. Think about your son." The recordings provided the clearest evidence yet that Cole had threatened Grace, further supporting the theory that he had orchestrated her disappearance to protect himself and his career. As the investigation deepened, a pattern of manipulation emerged. Cole had not only lied to his colleagues and the public, but had also created a web of deceit that ensnared everyone around him, from the fabricated alibi for Grace's disappearance to his marriage to Lila. It seemed that Cole's entire life had been built on a foundation of lies. For Lila, the revelations were devastating. She had entered the marriage believing she had found safety and stability, only to discover that she had married a man capable of unimaginable betrayal. "He used me," Lila told her attorney. "I was just another piece in his game." The trial of Lila Prescott for the murder of Sheriff Cole Braxton became one of the most high-profile cases in Riverstone and the state of Texas. The courtroom was packed with reporters, true crime enthusiasts, and townspeople divided over whether Lila was a cold-blooded killer or a victim of Cole's deception. The prosecution argued that Lila had acted out of anger and jealousy upon discovering Cole's secrets. They painted her as a manipulative woman who had married Cole for his status and turned on him when she learned he wasn't the man she thought he was. The prosecution's case focused on the timeline of events, questioning Lila's motives and actions on the night of Cole's death. The prosecution emphasized that Lila had taken Cole's gun, a weapon she was unfamiliar with, and fired it at close range, painting it not as self-defense, but as a premeditated act. "She knew what she was doing," said Prosecutor Matthew Langston during his opening statement. They called on Cole's deputies and friends to testify about his character, portraying him as a dedicated lawman who had made mistakes but didn't deserve to be gunned down by his wife. They also presented evidence suggesting that Lila had accessed the documents in Cole's briefcase before the shooting, arguing that her actions were driven by rage rather than fear. Lila's defense, led by the determined Carla Deo, countered that she had acted in self-defense after uncovering the depth of Cole's corruption and realizing that her life was in danger. "Cole Braxton wasn't the hero this town believed him to be," Deo said in her opening statement. "He was a man who lived a double life, one that endangered not only Grace Turner, but also Lila Prescott." The defense introduced the contents of the briefcase as evidence, arguing that Cole's actions in the hours leading up to his death were threatening and erratic. Lila herself took the stand, delivering an emotional testimony in which she recounted the events of the honeymoon night. "I confronted him about Grace," Lila told the jury, her voice trembling. "He didn't deny it. He just snapped. He grabbed me by the arm and said I'd know what I was getting into. I was terrified. When I saw the gun, I thought he was going to use it on me. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to survive." One of the most gripping moments of the trial came when Dale Turner, Grace's brother, took the stand. His testimony about Grace's disappearance and the years he had spent searching for answers brought many in the courtroom to tears. "Grace trusted him," Dale said, his voice cracking. "She thought he was going to protect her, but instead he destroyed her, and he almost destroyed Lila too." The prosecution tried to paint Dale as a biased witness, but his heartfelt words resonated with both the jury and the public. In their closing arguments, both sides appealed to the jury's sense of justice. The prosecution urged them to view Lila's actions as a calculated act of murder, while the defense argued that she was a victim who had acted out of fear and desperation. "She married a man she thought she could trust," Deo said in her final remarks. "What she found was a monster." "Lila didn't take Cole's life because she wanted to," Deo continued. "She did it because she had no other choice." The jury deliberated for 3 days before delivering a verdict that shocked both the courtroom and the town of Riverstone. On December 15th, the jury filed into the courtroom. The atmosphere was thick with tension as everyone waited to hear the fate of Lila Prescott, the woman who had confessed to killing her husband, Sheriff Cole Braxton. Lila sat at the defense table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face pale but calm. Beside her, her attorney, Carla Deo, maintained a composed expression, though her eyes revealed the weight of the situation. The courtroom was packed with townspeople divided over the trial. Some came to support Lila, believing her to be a victim of Cole's web of lies, while others were there to honor the sheriff, still convinced that his murder was unjustifiable. When the foreman of the jury rose to deliver the verdict, a silence fell over the room. "We, the jury, find the defendant Lila Prescott not guilty of murder in the first degree," the foreman announced. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. For a moment, it seemed as though time had stopped. Then the foreman continued. "However, we find the defendant guilty of manslaughter under extenuating circumstances." Judge Miriam Caldwell, who had presided over the trial with a firm but fair demeanor, delivered the sentence later that afternoon, acknowledging the jury's findings and the mitigating factors presented by the defense. "The court recognizes that the actions of the deceased played a significant role in the events that transpired," Judge Caldwell said. "While Mrs. Prescott's actions cannot go without consequence, the evidence presented makes it clear that this was not an act of premeditated violence, but one of desperation." Lila was sentenced to 3 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 months. The verdict was bittersweet for Lila. While she still faced time behind bars, the decision absolved her of being labeled a cold-blooded murderer. As she was escorted out of the courtroom, she locked eyes with Dale Turner, who gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. Though he still mourned his sister's death, he believed that Lila's actions had brought the kind of justice Grace Turner never received. The verdict sent shockwaves through Riverstone. Some residents were outraged, believing Lila had gotten off too easily. "She killed a man in cold blood," said Helen Mitchell, a vocal supporter of Cole. "No amount of secrets justifies what she did." Others, however, felt the verdict was fair, or even too harsh. "Cole wasn't who we thought he was," said Jason Morales, a retired firefighter who had known Cole for years. "I hate to say it, but maybe Lila did what the rest of us couldn't. She stopped him from hurting anyone else." The town remained deeply divided, and the case became a flashpoint for discussions about power, corruption, and the lengths people would go to protect themselves. While Lila's trial had ended, the evidence uncovered during the investigation reopened the case of Grace Turner. With the USB drive and other documents in hand, investigators began building a case against those complicit in Grace's disappearance. A breakthrough came when Rachel Decker, one of Cole's former colleagues in the Austin Narcotics Division, agreed to testify about his involvement in the cover-up. Her testimony implicated not only Cole, but also members of the drug ring who had likely orchestrated Grace's murder. Months later, a joint task force arrested 2 suspects linked to the cartel, charging them with conspiracy to commit murder. While these arrests brought some closure to Grace's family, her body was never recovered, leaving her brother Dale with lingering questions. "We'll never get her back," Dale said in a televised interview, "but at least now people know the truth about what happened to her and Cole. He's not a hero anymore. He's just a man who thought he could get away with it." Thank you for sticking with us until the end. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and comment 1. If not, comment 0. Keep exploring more thrilling cases right here on our channel.